Hey, good morning. It's Wednesday, July 21st. Again, thanks again for being here today. We've come to the portion in my book, I'm talking about everyday talk, and just kind of going through that because it's a big part of what I'm about and what Everyday Talk 24/7 is about. And we've come to the chapter 10, which is on everyday talk about sex. And it's this far back in the book for a particular reason, is that we really can't talk about God's understanding of sex and sexuality without all that we've been talking about to this point. God's faithfulness, God's control over everyday life, the importance of the gospel, and the specific tools we need as parents to be able to communicate well, that we are gospel-centered, that we listen well, that we speak in the way that God has told us to speak, that we use pleasant words, that we are marked by gentleness, that we don't have a big sins, little sins mentality that says sex is the big awful sin and everything else is not so much. And then this idea of God's greenhouse, where you're preparing your children to enter into the world. Well, one of the biggest transition points as they leave your home and go out into the world is how do they deal with sexuality and sex? Because in the 21st century, certainly in Western civilization, in the United States culture in particular, sex is in your face. And it comes from, the reason that it is so prominent is because it's coming from a particular desire of our culture to throw off the biblical view of sex. The idea that sex is a part of marriage by God's design for God's honor and man's good and blessing is pretty much deemed as archaic, medieval, awful, and it's becoming hate speech. But in reality, one of the great reasons that we have fallen as a culture to where we are is because we have taken sex to be something that we can define personally. Because there is so much pleasure involved in sex, we make it a personal thing. The culture makes it that way. But the pleasure derives from honoring God, not from honoring self. So your everyday talk about sex is really your everyday talk about God. And if we take sex and hold it to a particular corner of our lives, then we give in to what the world and the enemy's view of sex is. It's part of what it means to know and walk and enjoy things with God. And there's a specialness and there's an intimacy to sex that is designed for a relationship. And a particular relationship, that relationship is marriage. God is not trying to be restrictive or strangle us, but give us the one best context where this powerful, beautiful, explosive gift of sex can best fit. And indeed, it can only fit there. And as our immediate culture around us has embraced other ways of looking at sexuality and sexual relations, we have not become more stable as a country and as a culture. We have become exactly the opposite. Depression, anxiety, worry, nervousness, all of those things, at their root, come from not being able to function in the way that God has called us to in terms of honoring Him and in the area of sexuality. And that's the thought I want to leave you with tonight. I'm going to talk about more tonight, more specifics, but that's the groundwork for it. And that's why it's at this particular place in the book. Not first, not last, but significant. So I want you to be able to hang on to that and these thoughts, and maybe just look around and see, how is sex portrayed? It's not portrayed as something special between a husband and a wife to draw them closer together. It's portrayed something quite different than that. But you interact with that today and give me some thoughts, and we'll talk about it tonight. Again, it's such a blessing and honor to be with you. I pray that you'll have a good day, that your thoughts will be centered on the beautiful, wonderful character of God. Again, thanks so much for watching. If you haven't turned on post notifications when you subscribe, and check us out on everydaytalk247.com. Again, thanks so much for being here. Look forward, Lord willing, to see you tonight. Bye-bye.